She threw her wedding ring at my face and called me a financial failure. 3 days later, lawyers showed up at my basement apartment with news that would change everything. My estranged uncle, the billionaire I'd never met, had left me his entire fortune. And my ex-wife? She had no idea what was coming. I'm Blake Morrison, and I need to tell you about the night my entire world collapsed. I was sitting in our cramped basement apartment, if you could even call it an apartment, staring at spreadsheets on my laptop, just trying to figure out how to stretch another paycheck. I was 32 years old, working as a junior accountant at a mid-sized firm, and honestly, I was exhausted. Not just physically tired, but that deep in your bones kind of exhaustion that comes from knowing you're disappointing the person you love most. The door slammed. I didn't even have to look up to know Sienna was home. My wife, well, I guess I should say my soon-to-be ex-wife, had this way of announcing her mood through how she entered a room. That night, the slam echoed through our tiny space like a gunshot. "We need to talk," she said, and those 4 words made my stomach drop. She didn't even take off her coat. She just stood there in the doorway, holding a manila envelope that looked too official to final. I closed my laptop slowly, and that's when I saw her face. There was no sadness there. No conflict. Just cold determination. "I want a divorce, Blake." I felt like someone had punched all the air out of my lungs. We'd been married for 5 years. 5 years of struggling together, or at least I thought we were struggling together. I started to speak, to ask why, to beg for a chance to fix whatever was broken, but she cut me off. "I've already talked to a lawyer. The papers are ready. I just need you to sign them." The way she said it, so matter of fact, so prepared, that's when I realized this wasn't a spontaneous decision. She'd been planning this. For how long? Weeks? Months? While I was working overtime to try to save money for the house she wanted, she was plotting her exit strategy. "Sienna, please, just talk to me." "What's going on? We can work through." "Work through what, Blake?" Her voice rose, sharp and cutting. "Your failure? Your mediocrity. I didn't sign up to be poor forever. I didn't marry you to live in a basement apartment at 30 years old. Every word was like a slap. I stood up, my hands shaking, trying to find something to say that would reach her, that would remind her of who we used to be. "We knew it would be hard at first," I said, my voice barely steady. "I'm building my career. I'm working toward what?" She interrupted, and the contempt in her voice cut deeper than any knife. "You've been working toward something for 5 years, Blake. Your big business idea failed. You're still at the same dead-end job. Face it, you're never going to be anything more than mediocre. If this story resonates with you, hit that like button right now, because what happens next will blow your mind. And make sure you're subscribed, because this is just the beginning of a journey you won't believe." That confrontation happened on a Tuesday. By Friday, Sienna was completely moved out, and I was sitting alone in an apartment that felt like a tomb. She'd taken everything: the couch we'd saved up for, the TV, even the coffee maker. All that was left was my laptop, a mattress on the floor, and a stack of divorce papers I couldn't bring myself to read. I called in sick to work that week. I know that sounds pathetic, but I couldn't function. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, that cold, disgusted expression, when she called me mediocre. The worst part? A small voice in my head wondered if she was right. Maybe I was a failure. Maybe I'd never amount to anything. Thursday night, I finally opened the divorce papers. She was asking for half of our joint savings, all $8,000 of it. Money I'd scraped together from overtime and skipped lunches. She knew exactly what we had, down to the penny. This wasn't emotional. This was calculated. She'd planned every detail. I spent that entire weekend in a fog. I ate ramen because it was cheap. I avoided my phone because my mom kept calling, and I couldn't bear to tell her that her son's marriage had imploded. I just existed in that dark apartment, wondering how I'd gotten here and if I'd ever climb out of this hole. Monday morning, someone knocked on my door. 3 sharp, authoritative knocks that made me jump. I wasn't expecting anyone. For a paranoid moment, I thought maybe it was Sienna coming back for something else she'd forgotten to take. I opened the door to find 2 men in suits that probably cost more than my car. Expensive suits. The kind lawyers wear in movies. One was older, maybe 60, with silver hair and glasses. The younger one, probably mid-40s, held a leather briefcase. "Blake Morrison?" the older man asked. My first thought was that I was being sued. That somehow, this nightmare was about to get worse. "Yeah, that's me," I said, my voice hoarse from not talking to anyone in days. "My name is Howard Chen, and this is my associate, Patrick Wells. We represent the estate of Marshall Morrison." "May we come in?" Marshall Morrison. My brain scrambled to place the name. Then it clicked: my father's older brother. The one who'd left the family before I was born? I'd heard stories, but I'd never met him. Honestly, I didn't even know if he was still alive. "Marshall passed away 3 weeks ago," Howard said, once we were inside. He glanced around my sparse apartment, but his expression remained professionally neutral. "Mr. Morrison, your uncle left explicit instructions in his will. You are his sole beneficiary." I stared at him. The words weren't making sense. Sole beneficiary of what? Marshall and my dad hadn't spoken in over 30 years. "I'm sorry, there must be some mistake," I said. I never even met my uncle. Howard opened his briefcase and pulled out a document. "There's no mistake, Mr. Morrison. Your uncle's estate is valued at approximately $500 million, and it's all yours." I didn't sleep that night. How could I? $500 million. The number didn't even feel real. It felt like a joke, like some cruel prank the universe was playing on me. But Howard and Patrick had left me with documents real, legal documents with bank account numbers and property listings and stock portfolios that went on for pages. There was one condition, though. One test that Marshall had built into his will. I couldn't tell anyone about the inheritance for 90 days. Howard explained that Marshall wanted to see if I'd use the knowledge for revenge or if I'd show integrity. Even dead, my uncle was testing my character. That meant I had to let the divorce go through. I had to sign those papers and watch Sienna walk away, knowing I could stop it with just a few words. Knowing I could tell her the truth, and she'd come crawling back. But here's what I realized. Sitting in that empty apartment at 3 in the morning, I didn't want her to come back. Not like that. She'd shown me exactly who she was when she thought I had nothing. She'd thrown her wedding ring at my face and called me a failure. She'd mocked my dreams and calculated her exit down to the last dollar. So I made a decision. I'd honor Marshall's 90-day rule. I'd sign the papers. I'd let her think she'd won. 2 days later, I met Sienna at a cafe to finalize everything. She showed up 15 minutes late, designer sunglasses perched on her head, looking annoyed that she had to be there at all. I slid the signed divorce papers across the table without a word. She actually looked surprised. "You're not going to fight me on anything?" "No," I said simply. "You want the $8,000? Take it. I just want this over with." She studied my face like she was trying to figure out if this was some kind of trap. "What about the apartment?" "Keep it if you want it. I'll find something else." For just a second, I thought I saw something flicker in her eyes. Confusion? Maybe. Or doubt. But then, she grabbed the papers and stood up. "Good, Troy and I are moving in together next week anyway." Troy Bannister. The real estate developer she'd been seeing behind my back. She didn't even have the decency to hide it anymore. "I hope you're happy, Sienna," I said, and I meant it. Not in a bitter way, but in a final way. She laughed. "Happier than I ever was with you." I watched her walk out of that cafe, and I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a strange sense of closure. Over the next few weeks, I played the part perfectly. I moved into an even smaller apartment in Oak Point, and upgrading yet, and raising suspicions. I kept going to my job, kept my head down. Meanwhile, I was meeting with financial advisors in secret, learning about Marshall's tech company, making plans. And Sienna. She was all over social media. Pictures of her and Troy at expensive restaurants, designer shopping bags, beach vacations. She was living her best life, or so she wanted everyone to believe. She had no idea what was coming. Day 91. I woke up that morning and realized I was free. Free from the silence, free from pretending, free from playing the role of the struggling accountant everyone thought I was. Howard had scheduled a press conference to announce Morrison Tech's new leadership. My face was about to be everywhere. I put on a suit, a real one this time, tailored and expensive, and looked at myself in the mirror. I barely recognized the man staring back. Not because I looked different physically, but because everything had changed. The weight I'd been carrying for 3 months was finally lifting. The press conference was surreal. Cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions, headlines being written in real time. Mystery Air takes control of $500 million tech empire. Marshall Morrison's unknown nephew emerges. Within an hour, my face was on every major business news site. Within 3 hours, I was trending on social media. My phone exploded. Old friends I hadn't heard from in years. Former colleagues. Distant relatives I didn't even know existed. Everyone suddenly wanted to reconnect with Blake Morrison. But there was one number I was waiting to see. One person whose reaction I knew would be coming. It came at 2:47 p.m. 17 missed calls from Sienna. Then the text started. Blake, is this real? Call me. We need to talk. This is insane. Why didn't you tell me? Blake, please. I need to understand what's happening. I didn't respond. I'd spent 90 days being silent. What was a few more hours? That evening, I attended a charity gala, my first official public appearance as CEO of Morrison Tech. I donated $5 million to a children's hospital. Something Marshall would have wanted. The ballroom was filled with politicians, celebrities, business leaders, people who 3 months ago wouldn't have given me a second glance. My phone kept buzzing in my pocket. Sienna over and over. Then calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Then, finally, a text from my mother. Sienna showed up at our house. She's hysterical. What's going on? I stepped out onto a balcony, away from the crowd, and called my parents. I'd told them everything a week ago, prepared them for what was coming. My mom answered on the first ring. Blake, honey, Sienna was here for an hour. She was crying, begging us to tell her how to reach you. She says she's made a terrible mistake. What did you tell her? That you're living your life and she needs to respect that. Your father almost didn't let her in the door after what she did to you. I smiled. My parents had been furious when they learned about the divorce, about how Sienna had treated me. Now they knew the whole story. She kept asking if the news was real, my mom continued. If you really inherited all that money, Blake, she looked desperate, like she'd lost everything. She made her choice, Mom. I know, sweetheart. I just wanted you to know she came by. And Blake, your father and I are so proud of you. Not because of the money, but because of how you've handled all of this. That meant more to me than any inheritance ever could. The charity gala was in full swing when security radioed me. Mr. Morrison, we have a situation at the main entrance. A woman claiming to be your wife is demanding to see you. She's causing a scene. I knew exactly who it was. Part of me wanted to have security remove her immediately. But another part, the part that needed closure, decided to face this head on. Let her in, I said. But keep security close. I watched from across the ballroom as Sienna entered. She was wearing a dress I didn't recognize, probably borrowed, because I knew Troy's financial situation had deteriorated rapidly. She looked around frantically until her eyes locked on mine. Then she started pushing through the crowd. People were staring. Whispers rippled through the room. Everyone here knew who I was now, and they were about to witness something that would be talked about for months. Blake! She called out, her voice cracking. Blake, please. We need to talk. I didn't move. I just stood there, champagne glass in hand, and watched her approach. Security flanked her on both sides, ready to intervene if needed. She stopped a few feet away, breathing hard, her eyes red from crying. You can't just ignore me. I'm still your wife, ex-wife, I corrected calmly. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks ago. You made sure of that. Blake, I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. I didn't know I couldn't have known. Known what, Sienna? That I'd inherit money? I let the words hang in the air. That's exactly the point. You didn't know, so you showed me who you really are. She reached for my arm, but security stepped forward. She pulled back, tears streaming down her face. I was confused. I was scared about our future. But I never stopped loving you. That made me laugh. Actually laugh. Several people nearby turned to watch. You never stopped loving me? Sienna, you threw your wedding ring at my face. You called me mediocre. You told me I'd never amount to anything. And Troy was waiting outside in his car while you did it. Her face went pale. She hadn't expected me to say it out loud in front of all these people. I was angry, she whispered. I said things I didn't mean. No, I said, my voice steady and clear. You said exactly what you meant. You divorced me because you thought I was poor. Because you thought I'd always be poor. You never gave me a chance to show you who I could become. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. The final piece of this entire ordeal. These are the divorce papers you had me sign. You'll notice you waived any claim to future assets. Your lawyer was very thorough. She stared at the envelope like it was a snake. You chose Troy. You chose what you thought was a better life. That was your decision, Sienna. And now you have to live with it. Security moved forward as she started to protest, gently but firmly escorting her toward the exit. Her voice echoed across the ballroom, Blake, please, don't do this. We can fix this. But we couldn't. And I finally understood that some things aren't meant to be fixed. 6 months have passed since that night at the gala. I'm sitting in my office on the 42nd floor of Morrison Tech headquarters, looking out over the city. The view is incredible, but honestly, that's not what makes me feel successful. It's what I've built in these 6 months that matters. I've transformed Marshall's company into something he'd be proud of. We've implemented profit sharing for all employees, expanded our scholarship programs, and created a work environment where people actually want to come to work. Forbes did a feature on me last month, not just about the inheritance, but about the kind of leader I'm becoming. That meant more than any dollar amount ever could. I know what you're wondering. What happened to Sienna? I'd be lying if I said I didn't keep tabs through mutual friends. Troy was arrested for fraud and identity theft about 2 weeks after the gala. Turns out he'd been running schemes for years using other people's credit to fund his lifestyle. Sienna's name was on dozens of documents. She spent months in legal battles, trying to prove she didn't know what he was doing. She lost everything. Filed for bankruptcy. Moved back in with her parents. Last I heard, she's working retail to pay off legal fees. Sometimes I see her posts on social media. They're rare now, and there's no more designer bags or exotic vacations. Just silence. I won't lie and say it doesn't affect me. Not because I still have feelings for her, but because it's a reminder of how quickly life can change. How one decision, one moment of revealing your true character, can alter everything. Last Tuesday, I ran into her at a grocery store. Pure coincidence. She was in the cereal aisle, looking tired, older somehow. She saw me and froze. For a moment, I thought about just walking away, pretending I hadn't noticed her. But I didn't. I walked up to her. Hello, Sienna. Her eyes filled with tears immediately. Blake, I don't even know what to say. You don't have to say anything. I destroyed everything, she whispered. My life, my reputation, any chance we had. I was so stupid, so incredibly stupid. I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt nothing but a distant sadness. Not for us, but for the person she could have been if she'd made different choices. I hope you find what you're looking for, Sienna. But it was never going to be with me. I walked away, leaving her standing there with her shopping basket, and I felt lighter than I had in months. Here's what I've learned through all of this. Wealth doesn't define you. Sienna didn't divorce me for being poor. She divorced me for who she thought I'd always be. She never considered that people can change, grow, and rise. She saw a snapshot and decided it was the whole picture. That was her mistake, not mine. Last month, I started a foundation called Second Chances Initiative. We help people going through difficult divorces, especially those who've been financially abused or abandoned. We provide legal aid, career counseling, and emotional support. It's become my passion project.